You're listening to Big World Network.
Just Kill Me, Episode 10, Kill Shot. Written by Wendy Herman. Read by Wendy Herman. Monday morning had finally come. I reported to the same classroom where I'd spent 2 weeks before, sitting in the same uncomfortable chair, staring at the same computer screen. The room was empty, save the dozen computers occupying the perimeter. I went back out to the registration desk, and the same short, stout agent was there. I asked again if he was absolutely sure I was in the right place. He gave a frustrated and blatantly condescending sigh, and nodded, peering at me over the rim of his glasses. What was this little man's problem? Just before I turned around, I gently grasped his vibrant teal-green tie in my hand. I think I heard him swallow hard, and said, "By the way, this color is incredibly sexy. Matches your eyes." Then I winked and left him standing there staring at his tie. As I spun on my heels to return to the classroom, Agent Moss was there, her arms folded across her chest, and a smirk on her face. I froze and stared at her, wondering what she was thinking. Her hands dropped to her hips. "Trainee Douglas, I'm here to take you to your small arms training." Small arms training. Sounds fun. She waved her hand for me to follow, and I fell in step next to her. We hadn't gone 10 feet when she said, just above a whisper, "I'm impressed. You had quite an effect on him. I don't think Agent Biggs has smiled since he lost his tongue." As I walked, I looked quickly behind me to see the short agent blushing and grinning after me. I returned his smile, happy that I had made his day. Then I realized what Moss had just said. Suddenly I was horrified. I stopped walking and stared at her in disbelief. "What?" She pulled me along and my legs managed to move, although I hadn't instructed them to. He was undercover, deep in the mafia scene. Some moron blew his cover and Tony the Moose had one of his goons cut out Big's tongue. A subtle message for the FBI. Holy shit. Holy shit, I decided to share. My mind raced. We were still walking. Where was this small arms training anyway? Tony the Moose? Was Al Pacino in that one? Was his sidekick a squirrel? Cutting out someone's tongue was considered subtle? Agent Moss chuckled. "Having second thoughts?" Oh, hell no. She wasn't going to scare me away that easily. We stopped at the elevators and Moss pushed the button. They both immediately opened and I followed her into the leftmost doors. Once inside, she again took charge and pushed the button labeled B, the basement. By the time the doors opened to the sublevel, I had more or less recovered from the horrors of Tony the Moose and Agent Biggs' lack of tongue, but I was sure they would both show up in my dreams that night. I took a deep breath and straightened my blouse. I didn't have time for distraction. I was about to hold a gun for the first time. The indoor shooting range was pretty much what I expected. I guess I had seen so many of them on TV, it was almost familiar. Agent Moss walked me over to the front desk, where a very tall, skinny gentleman— I didn't assume he was an agent due to the fact that he was wearing a Halo t-shirt and wore his hair to his shoulders. He scanned her badge and had her sign in on the futuristic computer screen that was recessed into the countertop. Well, it looked futuristic to me. Before we proceeded through the doors, she smiled at the gamer geek and pointed to his shirt. "You know, I like your Skyrim shirt better." He grinned and looked down at his shirt as if he'd forgotten which one he was wearing. I imagined his collection of gamer t-shirts to be vast. "Dragons? Really?" he teased her. Her face contorted to mock anger. "Dragons are cool," she poked him in the chest. He put his hands in the air, pretending her finger was a gun. Hey, put that thing away. I'll wear Skyrim tomorrow, I promise." She backed off and started laughing. He just shook his head. "Agent Moss, you are a geek in agent's clothing," he informed her. "You say the sweetest things, Johnny." Although I was enjoying this little exchange, I was anxious to get in there and see what I could do with a firearm. I hadn't realized I was actually bouncing up and down on my heels ever so slightly, like a child waiting for her turn on the swing. Moss noticed. "All right, Douglas, don't pee yourself. We're going." I was really itching to get in there, and assumed it was the excitement of it all, but I soon realized there was something more going on. I felt different. I suddenly had this overwhelming feeling of confidence. I was normally a pretty confident person, but this was downright cockiness I was experiencing, and it was making me giddy and a little uneasy. The sensible Freya was being beaten to a pulp, allowing G.I. Jane to come to the surface. I followed Moss obediently, but silently cursed at her casual speed. "Let's go, Moss. I need to shoot a gun again." Again? G.I. Jane was taking over now, and somewhere deep inside of me, Freya gasped as I, had the strangest feeling of déjà vu that I, may have handled a gun before, and done it well. But that couldn't be true, could it? Maybe in another life. Once we had our protective goggles and earplugs in place, Agent Moss walked me over to the third lane and set a 10-cartridge magazine on the counter. Then she gently placed the 9mm handgun next to it. It was beautiful. Agent Moss started. "Now I'm going to give you the short version of Gun Safety 101 right now, so listen up." Although waiting was making me crazy, like the kind of foreplay that was more torture than pleasure, I decided not to let on that I somehow knew everything there was to know about a 9mm handgun. I straightened up and gave Moss my full attention. She picked up the gun and started pointing to parts of it, as I attempted to feign intense interest. "This is the barrel, the chamber, the safety, the trigger," she rattled off. Then she picked up the magazine. "The magazine goes," she started as she popped it into place, "right in here like this." I heard it click, and my whole body tingled. "Then you disengage the safety," she motioned, but didn't actually do it. "And just point and shoot. Pretty easy, really." She handed the gun to me, all the while pointing the barrel away from us and downrange. I felt the weight of it in my hands. It felt good. A wave of heat swept over me. Without thinking, I whispered, "Hello, baby." Why did I say that? I suddenly felt a tingle replace the heat wave and shivered. Moss grinned at my intimate comment toward the deadly weapon. "Nice," she said, nodding slightly and chuckling under her breath. A gentleman had claimed the adjoining lane and was now shooting sporadically, so Agent Moss had to raise her voice to be heard. "Never point it anywhere but at your intended target," she yelled. "And you can't let the end of your barrel go past this line." She pointed at a red line drawn on the small counter and up the sides of the cubicle we were in. Yeah, shut up so I can fire the damn thing." "That's called the firing line," she continued. "Uh-huh, knew that too." I stood there motionless for a second, waiting for her next instruction. When none came, I glanced at her, raising my eyebrows. She raised her eyebrows back and motioned for me to go ahead. Finally! I smiled and took a deep breath. After flipping the safety off, I raised the gun to eye level and instantly found the sight, and my target at the far end of the lane, a paper silhouette of a human form. "You'd better run, dude." I was already taking another slow breath and preparing to shoot on my exhale when Moss yelled, "Always shoot on your exhale! It's when you're the most steady!" I applied the slightest amount of pressure to the trigger, exhilarated at what I was about to do. More pressure, more, just a tiny bit more. The world around me faded, and all sound muffled to near silence. Breathe in slowly. It was just me and my gun, and my target. Exhale, and... "Oh, and just discharge one at a time, so we can assess each..." Instantly the shooting range disappeared, and Moss's tedious instructions were silenced. It was nighttime, and I was standing outside in the middle of a busy street. I was poised to shoot, pointing my firearm against traffic, waiting. Cars whizzed by me, drivers and passengers rubbernecking to watch me. Then I saw my target. A black Lincoln Continental with blacked-out windows and European plates was heading straight for me, intending to run me over and be done with it, but I had other plans. The enemy was 20 yards away and approaching fast. 15 yards. 10 yards. I pulled the trigger and emptied my magazine, aiming right between the driver's eyes. The car veered as my target slumped over the steering wheel. I stood my ground, and the black car crashed into a boutique to my right that had closed for the evening hours before. As I grinned and silently congratulated myself, I heard someone yelling my name. I knew his voice. knew it well. But when I turned, the shooting range rematerialized, and I was staring at my target again, now just the paper silhouette. A tendril of smoke was creeping out of the barrel of my gun, and the handle felt warm. I remembered to breathe. G.I. Jane was fading into my psyche, and Freya had returned. Where the hell had all of that come from? I must watch way too many cop shows. I turned to Moss, who was focusing downrange, her mouth hanging open like she'd been saying something but had been cut short. Her eyes were wide with shock. Had she been saying something? I couldn't remember. That's when I realized the entire range was quiet. So quiet it was unsettling. Where had everyone gone? I leaned back to check the other stalls, and there were still 3 or 4 others there, but now they were all leaning back in their stalls, staring at me with disbelief. Crap. What did I do? Something stupid, I was sure. I gently laid the gun down and wiped my sweaty hands on my pants. I looked up nervously at Agent Moss. Might as well face the music now. Okay, what did I do? Moss blinked a few times and then turned to me. You fired your entire magazine. Did you do that on purpose? She asked. I did? I picked up the gun and popped out the clip. Empty. Huh. I didn't remember pulling the trigger more than... Wait. I couldn't remember pulling the trigger at all. Must be all the adrenaline pumping through me. You said you'd never shot a gun before, right? Never. Never even held a real one, I replied. Other than in ridiculously vivid daydreams, apparently. She didn't respond, but pushed a red button on the wall of the cubicle that I hadn't noticed before. Yet I instinctively knew it was to bring the target closer so you could count your hits. I really need to stop watching all those Law and Order reruns. As the target neared, I saw one, and only one, hole. Damn. The paper victim stopped moving about a foot from us, and Moss reached up and pulled it off the metal hook. She scrutinized the head wound for a second. You not only hit the target on your first try, Douglas, Moss said. You got an identical kill shot. 10 times.
You're listening to Big World Network.